The golden afternoon light filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Catherine sat cross-legged on the plush carpet of her private sitting room. Around her lay scattered photographs, fashion magazines, and thick history books filled with images of past royal coronations. Her heart raced as she turned each page, studying the elaborate gowns and ceremonial outfits worn by queens and princesses throughout British history. Catherine picked up a photograph of Queen Elizabeth during her own coronation in 1953. The young queen looked so serious and dignified in her heavy white satin gown. Catherine wondered if she had felt the same butterflies dancing in her stomach that were currently making her feel sick with worry. The responsibility felt enormous. Millions of people around the world would be watching her every move, analyzing her every choice. William walked into the room carrying 2 cups of tea, his own stack of military uniform catalogs tucked under his arm. He noticed his wife's troubled expression immediately. She looked up at him with those beautiful brown eyes that had first captured his heart at university, but now they were filled with uncertainty and fear. "I have no idea what I am doing," Catherine whispered, gesturing helplessly at the mess of papers around her. "How am I supposed to choose something that will be photographed and remembered forever? What if I make the wrong choice? What if people think I look ridiculous?" William set down the teacups and joined her on the floor, carefully moving aside some of the precious historical documents. He understood her worry completely because he was feeling exactly the same pressure about his own ceremonial uniform. The weight of tradition felt heavier than any military gear he had ever worn during his service days. "We will figure this out together," he said softly, taking her hand in his. "Just like we always do. Remember when we were planning our wedding? And you were convinced that your dress choice would disappoint everyone. Look how beautiful that turned out." Catherine smiled for the first time that afternoon, remembering how nervous she had been about her wedding gown. But this felt different somehow. More important. More permanent. A wedding dress gets worn once and then carefully preserved. A coronation outfit becomes part of history books forever. They spent the next hour looking through images together, pointing out details they liked and discussing what felt right for their personalities. Catherine was drawn to outfits that looked elegant but not overly fancy. She wanted to appear approachable and modern, while still respecting the ancient traditions of the ceremony. William struggled with similar feelings about his military dress uniform. He wanted to honor his service and his father's expectations, but he also hoped to show a more relaxed and accessible side of the monarchy. The young couple had always believed that royal duties should feel more connected to ordinary people's lives. As the sun began to set, Catherine pulled out a notebook and started sketching rough ideas. She drew simple dress shapes and wrote notes about colors and fabrics that appealed to her. William did the same with his uniform options, discussing which military honors felt most meaningful to include. "I want our outfits to tell our story," Catherine said thoughtfully. "Not just follow what everyone expects us to wear. I want people to see who we really are underneath all the ceremony and tradition." William nodded in agreement. They both knew this was about much more than just choosing beautiful clothes. These outfits would represent their vision for the future of the royal family. Modern, authentic, and genuinely caring about the people they would serve. The secret planning had officially begun, and despite their nervousness, both Catherine and William felt excited about creating something truly special and meaningful for this historic day. Sarah Burton sat alone in her design studio at Alexander McQueen, staring at a completely blank piece of paper on her drawing table. The white page seemed to mock her as she gripped her pencil tightly, unable to make even the smallest mark. Outside her window, London bustled with normal life, but inside this secret room, the pressure felt suffocating. The phone call had come 3 weeks ago. A very formal voice from Kensington Palace had requested a private meeting to discuss a special commission for the future Princess of Wales. Sarah had barely slept since that conversation. This was not just another dress design. This was history in the making. Sarah walked to her wall of inspiration images, studying photographs of every significant royal gown ever created. Queen Victoria's wedding dress, Princess Grace's stunning creations, Diana's unforgettable outfits, and of course, Catherine's own wedding gown that Sarah had designed years earlier. Each dress told a story, but what story should this coronation outfit tell? Her assistant knocked quietly on the door, bringing afternoon tea and a stack of fabric samples that had arrived from mills across Britain. Sarah spread the luxurious materials across her work table, running her fingers over silk, satin, and delicate lace. Each texture felt precious and important, like she was handling pieces of the future. Meanwhile, across London in a traditional Savile Row shop, master tailor Henry Poole faced his own creative crisis. He had been commissioned to create William's ceremonial uniform, and the responsibility kept him awake at night. 3 generations of his family had served the royal family, but never for such a monumentally important occasion. Henry examined military dress uniforms from the past century, noting every detail of braiding, button placement, and ceremonial decorations. William wanted something that honored tradition, but also reflected his more modern approach to royal duties. The challenge seemed impossible. How do you make a centuries-old uniform style feel fresh and relevant? Back in her studio, Sarah finally picked up her pencil and began sketching. She drew flowing lines that suggested elegance and grace, but also strength and confidence. Catherine was not just beautiful, she was intelligent and caring. The dress needed to show all of these qualities without being too obvious about it. Sarah remembered her private meeting with Catherine the week before. The future queen had been so nervous, but also surprisingly clear about what she wanted. "I want to look like myself," Catherine had said simply. "Just a better, more formal version of myself. I do not want to disappear behind too much decoration or tradition." Those words echoed in Sarah's mind as she continued sketching. She began to see a vision taking shape, a dress that was undeniably royal and ceremonial, but one that would allow Catherine's natural warmth and personality to shine through. The design needed to be timeless enough for history books, but modern enough to feel authentic to who Catherine really was. Henry faced similar challenges with William's uniform. The prince had expressed his desire to honor his military service, while also representing a new generation of royal leadership. During their consultation, William had spoken passionately about wanting to appear approachable and connected to ordinary people's experiences. As evening approached, both designers worked frantically on their initial concepts. Sarah's sketches began showing a dress that combined classical royal elements with subtle contemporary touches. Henry's uniform designs balanced traditional military grandeur with cleaner, more streamlined details. Neither designer could discuss their work with anyone else. The secrecy added another layer of pressure to an already overwhelming project. They were creating outfits that would be analyzed, criticized, and remembered for generations, but they had to work in complete isolation. Both Sarah and Henry knew they were holding pieces of history in their hands, and the weight of that responsibility would drive every decision they made in the coming weeks. Catherine sat in her private dressing room at Kensington Palace, surrounded by small boxes containing precious family jewelry and meaningful keepsakes. She had made a decision that surprised even herself. Her coronation outfit would not just be beautiful clothing. It would be a secret message written in fabric, embroidery, and carefully chosen accessories. She picked up a delicate pearl bracelet that had belonged to Princess Diana, her late mother-in-law. Catherine had worn it only once before, on her wedding day, hidden beneath her dress sleeve where only she and William knew it existed. Now she wanted to include something similar in her coronation look, a private tribute that would keep Diana's memory close during this important moment. William entered the room carrying a small wooden box that contained his grandfather's military medals. He had been thinking about the same thing as Catherine. Their outfits needed to tell stories that went beyond just looking appropriate for the cameras. They wanted to honor the people who would shape their lives and the values that would guide their future reign. "I want to wear something for each of our children," Catherine said softly, showing William 3 small charms shaped like their birth flowers: Charlotte's peony, George's rose, and Louis's lily of the valley. They can be embroidered so tiny that no one will notice unless they look very closely. William smiled at his wife's thoughtful planning. He opened his box and showed her the medals he wanted to include alongside his own military honors. "These represent service and sacrifice," he explained. "I want to carry that legacy forward while also representing our own experiences and hopes." Catherine had also been researching flowers and symbols from all the Commonwealth countries. She wanted her dress to subtly represent the global family she would soon help lead. A Canadian maple leaf worked into the lace, Australian wattle blossoms in the embroidery, New Zealand's silver fern delicately woven into the fabric pattern. Each country's symbol would be present but understated. The couple spent hours discussing how to incorporate these meaningful elements without making the outfits look cluttered or obvious. They wanted sophisticated subtlety, not flashy displays. The hidden messages were meant for their own hearts and for the people who would study the photographs closely in years to come. William decided to have his children's initials embroidered inside his ceremonial jacket in thread so fine it would be invisible to cameras, but meaningful to him. He also wanted to include a small piece of tartan fabric from Scotland, representing his deep connection to that part of the United Kingdom where he and Catherine had lived as newlyweds. Catherine's most emotional decision involved incorporating a tiny piece of lace from her wedding dress into the lining of her coronation gown. No one would ever see it, but she would know it was there, connecting her wedding day promises to her coronation day responsibilities. The same love that had brought them together would carry them through their new duties. They also discussed including symbols that represented their charitable work and personal passions. Catherine wanted subtle references to early childhood development and mental health awareness. William hoped to include elements that honored environmental conservation and emergency services, causes that were close to his heart. The planning became deeply emotional as they realized how many people and experiences had shaped their journey to this moment. Every thread and every small detail would carry meaning that extended far beyond fashion or tradition. Their outfits were becoming wearable autobiographies, telling the story of their love, their family, their service, and their dreams for the future. As the evening grew late, Catherine and William felt overwhelmed by the significance of what they were creating. These were not just coronation outfits. They were becoming sacred garments that would connect their past, present, and future in ways that only they would fully understand. Catherine stood by the large window in her private sitting room, holding delicate fabric samples up to catch the natural light. Her hands trembled slightly as she examined each piece of silk and satin, knowing that her choice would become part of history forever. The weight of the decision felt heavier than she had expected. Among all the beautiful options spread across her table, one particular shade of blue kept drawing her attention. It was not the traditional royal blue that many expected her to choose. Instead, it was a softer, more personal blue that reminded her of peaceful moments with her family. The color matched her children's eyes when they laughed, and it brought back memories of the wide-open skies over Anglesey, where she and William had lived as newlyweds. "This one feels right," Catherine whispered to herself, pressing the fabric sample against her heart. Tears began forming in her eyes as she remembered those early days of marriage, when life felt simpler and more private. Anglesey had been their sanctuary, a place where they could be just Kate and William, instead of the future king and queen. The silk fabric had come from a British mill that had been operating for over 200 years. The mill workers had no idea they were creating material for such an important royal occasion, but Catherine loved knowing that her dress would connect her to generations of British craftsmanship and tradition. The threads carried stories of countless other women who had worn silk for their most important life moments. Meanwhile, William faced his own emotional fabric choices in his study down the hall. He had spread his grandfather's war medals across his desk, studying each one carefully. These medals represented courage, sacrifice, and service during some of Britain's most difficult times. William wanted to honor that legacy while also bringing his own experiences and values to his ceremonial uniform. William picked up a medal from World War II, remembering stories his grandfather had shared about those dark but heroic days. He decided to wear these historic medals alongside his own military decorations from his service in the Royal Air Force and his time as a search and rescue pilot. The combination would create a bridge between past and present, showing how service and duty continued across generations. Catherine returned to her fabric selection, running her fingers over different textures and weights. She wanted something that would photograph beautifully, but also feel comfortable during the long coronation ceremony. The chosen blue silk felt perfect against her skin, neither too heavy nor too light. It seemed to whisper promises of elegance and confidence. The fabric selection process became deeply personal for both of them. These were not just materials for clothing. They were choosing pieces that would wrap around their bodies during one of the most important days of their lives. Every thread would witness their transformation from prince and princess to future king and queen. Catherine held the blue silk up to the window one more time, watching how the light played across its surface. She could imagine herself wearing this color as she walked through Westminster Abbey, carrying the hopes and dreams of millions of people. The fabric would need to be strong enough to support her courage and beautiful enough to represent the dignity of the monarchy. William made his final decision about his ceremonial decorations, choosing pieces that honored both military tradition and his personal service record. He wanted young people to see that royal duty could include real work and genuine contribution to society, not just ceremonial appearances. As evening approached, both Catherine and William felt they had chosen materials and elements that truly represented their hearts and their hopes for the future of the royal family. Catherine walked nervously into the heavily guarded private fitting room that had been specially prepared in a secret location within Kensington Palace. Heavy curtains covered every window, and security guards stood outside the locked doors. Even her most trusted staff members had been asked to leave the area completely. This moment was too important and too private for any interruptions. Sarah Burton waited inside with her small team of seamstresses, all of whom had signed strict confidentiality agreements. The partially completed dress hung on a special mannequin, looking both magnificent and intimidating in the soft lighting. Catherine had seen sketches and fabric samples, but this was her first time seeing the actual garment taking shape. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked gently, understanding how overwhelming this moment must feel for the future queen. Catherine nodded, though her heart was beating so fast she worried everyone in the room could hear it. She had been fitted for many formal gowns before, but none had carried this level of historical significance. As Catherine stepped behind a privacy screen to change, she caught her reflection in one of the full-length mirrors. For just a moment, she saw herself as the young university student who had fallen in love with a prince without really understanding what that would mean for her future. Now, years later, she was about to try on the dress she would wear when accepting one of the most important roles in the world. The dress slipped over her head like liquid silk, settling perfectly on her shoulders and flowing gracefully to the floor. Sarah and her team made small adjustments, pinning here and tucking there. But the fit was already remarkably close to perfect. Catherine looked up at herself in the mirrors and gasped softly. The woman looking back at her appeared regal, confident, and undeniably queen-like. The blue silk caught the light beautifully, creating an almost magical glow around her figure. The subtle embroidered details were visible up close, but would appear elegant and understated in photographs. Most importantly, she still looked like herself, just elevated and transformed. "I look like a queen," Catherine whispered in amazement, turning slowly to see the dress from different angles. The realization hit her suddenly and completely. This was really happening. She was really going to become Queen of England someday, and this dress would be part of that incredible moment. Down the hall, William was having his own fitting experience with his military tailor. He stood before mirrors wearing his ceremonial uniform, complete with all the medals and decorations they had carefully selected. The uniform fit perfectly, but the emotional impact was overwhelming. William saw his father in his reflection, and his grandfather, and all the men who had worn similar uniforms while serving the crown throughout British history. The weight of their legacy settled on his shoulders along with the gold-braided jacket. He understood that he was not just putting on ceremonial clothing. He was stepping into a role that had been shaped by centuries of tradition and responsibility. The young prince touched the medals on his chest, feeling the medal that represented real courage and sacrifice. Some had belonged to his grandfather, others he had earned himself through military service. Together, they told the story of his family's commitment to duty and service. Catherine completed her fitting, feeling both excited and terrified. The dress made her feel powerful and beautiful, but it also made the enormity of her future role impossible to ignore. She was going to spend the rest of her life serving the British people and the Commonwealth, and this dress would forever be connected to the moment she accepted that responsibility. Both Catherine and William left their fittings feeling transformed. They had seen themselves as future monarchs for the first time, and the experience was both thrilling and sobering. The clothes had shown them who they were becoming, and there was no turning back from that destiny. Catherine sat in her private study late one evening, carefully examining a small piece of delicate lace from her wedding dress. She had made a decision that would have shocked royal protocol experts if they had known about it. Against centuries of tradition, she wanted to include this personal element in her coronation gown, hidden where only she and William would know it existed. The lace had been part of the most important dress of her life so far. It had witnessed her wedding vows, her first kiss as a married woman, and the beginning of her journey into the royal family. Now she wanted that same lace to be present when she took on her greatest responsibility as future queen. The seamstresses had initially been confused by her request, but Catherine had insisted firmly but politely. William was making his own secret rebellion against royal protocol in his dressing room nearby. He held a pair of special cufflinks that had been custom-made to his specifications. To anyone else, they would look like ordinary formal accessories, but William knew they contained a hidden message that only he and Catherine would understand. The cufflinks had been engraved with their children's initials in Morse code, invisible to cameras, but meaningful to his heart. The couple had discussed their desire to keep their authentic relationship alive within the formal constraints of their royal duties. They understood that Coronation Day would be filled with ancient rituals and ceremonial requirements, but they were determined to carry their love story with them through every moment. Palace staff had initially resisted these personal additions when Catherine and William had quietly mentioned their plans. Royal ceremonies were supposed to follow established traditions exactly, without personal modifications or modern touches that might seem inappropriate. Several senior advisors had suggested that such changes were unnecessary and potentially disrespectful to the historical significance of the occasion. Catherine had listened politely to these concerns, but her response had been clear and confident. "This is our coronation," she had said quietly but firmly. "We will honor every tradition and show proper respect for the ceremony, but we will not hide who we are or pretend that our love and our family do not matter to us." William had supported his wife completely, explaining to the advisors that their personal touches would be invisible to the public and cameras. These were private gestures meant to help them stay connected to their authentic selves during an overwhelming and historic day. They were not trying to change royal tradition, just to carry their hearts with them through the ceremony. The hidden wedding dress lace would be sewn into the lining of Catherine's coronation gown, completely invisible but present against her skin throughout the day. Every time she moved, she would feel that connection to her wedding day promises and the love that had brought them to this moment. The lace represented continuity between her past and future, between the woman who had married a prince and the woman who would become queen. William's Morse code cufflinks represented his determination to be a father first, even while accepting the enormous responsibilities of future kingship. George, Charlotte, and Louis would be with him in spirit through every moment of the ceremony, reminding him that his most important job would always be loving and protecting his family. These secret romantic gestures became symbols of Catherine and William's approach to royal life. They would fulfill every duty and honor every tradition, but they would never lose sight of what mattered most to them personally. Their coronation outfits would look completely appropriate and traditionally royal to the watching world, but underneath the formal exterior, their authentic love story would be present in every thread and every detail. The couple felt proud of their quiet rebellion, knowing that their hidden personal touches would help them stay grounded and connected to their true selves during one of the most formal and public days of their lives. Catherine spread a large world map across her dining room table, marking each Commonwealth country with colored pins. She had made an ambitious decision that would transform her coronation dress into something much more meaningful than a beautiful gown. Her outfit would become a walking representation of the global family she and William would soon help lead, with embroidered symbols from all 54 Commonwealth nations. The project had started as a simple idea, but quickly became incredibly complex. Each country needed to approve their chosen symbol, and the diplomatic discussions had been going on for weeks. Catherine worked closely with embassy representatives, cultural experts, and government officials to ensure that every embroidered detail would be appropriate and respectful. From Canada, she had chosen the delicate maple leaf, to be worked in gold thread so fine it would be almost invisible unless someone looked very closely. Australia would be represented by tiny wattle blossoms scattered across the dress hem. New Zealand's silver fern would wind gracefully around the neckline. Each symbol had been researched carefully to ensure it held deep cultural significance rather than being just a pretty decoration. The African Commonwealth countries presented beautiful options that filled Catherine with excitement. South Africa's King Prota flower would bloom in silk embroidery near her heart. Kenya's lion symbol would be worked into the dress bodice using traditional beading techniques. Ghana's cocoa pods would be delicately stitched into the fabric pattern, celebrating the country's agricultural heritage. William faced similar challenges with his ceremonial uniform as he incorporated Commonwealth military traditions into his outfit design. His sword would carry engravings representing different countries' military honors and service traditions. The tassel on his uniform would be woven with threads and colors that represented various Commonwealth flags. The island nations required special attention and creativity. Jamaica's hibiscus flower would be embroidered in vibrant colors that would catch the light during the ceremony. The Maldives would be represented by their national flower, the pink rose, worked in silk thread that matched the natural bloom. Barbados chose their beautiful bird of paradise flower, which would be positioned where Catherine could touch it if she needed comfort during the long ceremony. Each symbol required approval from multiple government departments, creating diplomatic discussions that sometimes took weeks to resolve. Catherine had not expected that choosing flowers and animals would involve so much international negotiation, but she understood the importance of getting every detail exactly right. The embroidery work became a massive undertaking that required specialists from around the world. Master craftspeople from India worked on intricate beading patterns. Scottish seamstresses created delicate thistle designs. Welsh artisans contributed leek and daffodil motifs that honored Catherine's connection to Wales through William's title as Prince of Wales. Catherine felt overwhelmed by the global responsibility represented in every tiny stitched detail. These were not just decorative elements. They were symbols of real countries with real people who would be watching the coronation and looking for signs that their new queen understood and cared about their unique cultures and contributions. The Pacific Commonwealth countries added tropical beauty to the design scheme. Fiji's hibiscus would complement Jamaica's version in a garden of flowers around the dress waistline. Papua New Guinea's bird of paradise would soar across the back of the gown in golden thread. Samoa's tuila flower would add delicate red accents that would photograph beautifully. As the embroidery work progressed, Catherine began to understand that her dress was becoming much more than royal clothing. It was transforming into a diplomatic statement, a cultural celebration, and a promise to represent diverse peoples and traditions with equal respect and attention. William experienced similar emotions as his uniform took shape with Commonwealth military symbols. He realized that every medal, every decoration, every colored thread would represent real people who had served their countries with courage and dedication. Both Catherine and William felt the enormous privilege and responsibility of wearing these global symbols during their coronation ceremony, knowing that their outfits would communicate their commitment to serving not just Britain, but the entire Commonwealth family. The clock in Westminster Abbey showed 11:30 at night as Catherine and William entered the ancient building for their final secret dress rehearsal. The massive cathedral was empty except for essential security personnel and the ceremony directors who would guide them through the complex coronation procedures. Tomorrow, this same space would be filled with 2,000 guests and watched by millions around the world, but tonight it belonged only to them. Catherine wore her complete coronation outfit for the first time, from the delicate undergarments to the final jewelry pieces. The weight of the ceremonial robes felt heavier than she had expected, and she practiced walking slowly and gracefully across the ancient stone floors. Each step required careful attention to avoid tripping on the long train that flowed behind her like liquid silk. William wore his full military dress uniform, complete with all the medals, decorations, and ceremonial sword they had so carefully selected. The uniform felt familiar from his years of military service, but the historical significance of wearing it in Westminster Abbey made every piece feel more important and meaningful than ever before. They walked through each part of the ceremony step by step, practicing their movements and timing while wearing the heavy formal clothing. Catherine learned how to sit regally in the ancient coronation chair while managing her voluminous skirts. William practiced drawing his ceremonial sword at the precise moment required by centuries-old protocol. The dress rehearsal became unexpectedly emotional as they realized how their carefully planned outfits would work within the actual ceremony. Catherine's Commonwealth flower embroidery would be visible to representatives from those countries who would be sitting in specific sections of the abbey. William's military medals would catch the light from the ancient windows as he moved through the ritual processions. During a break in the rehearsal, Catherine sat quietly in one of the abbey pews, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of what would happen tomorrow. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted the hidden piece of wedding dress lace that now lived permanently in her gown lining. The familiar texture against her fingers provided comfort and connection to happier, simpler times. William joined her in the pew, and they sat together in the magnificent cathedral, wearing their full coronation regalia, but feeling very much like the young couple who had fallen in love at university. The contrast between their grand surroundings and their authentic emotions created a surreal and powerful moment. "Do you remember when we were just Kate and William?" Catherine whispered, looking around at the soaring Gothic architecture that would witness their transformation tomorrow. "Sometimes I miss how simple everything used to be." William took her hand carefully, mindful of the formal gloves they were both wearing. "We are still Kate and William," he replied softly. "These clothes and this ceremony change our responsibilities, but they do not change who we are in our hearts. That is why we put all those secret personal touches into our outfits." They completed the full dress rehearsal just after midnight, practicing every bow, every movement, and every moment when they would need to manage their formal clothing while participating in the ancient rituals. The ceremony directors were satisfied that both Catherine and William understood their roles and could handle the physical challenges of their elaborate outfits. As they prepared to leave the abbey, Catherine and William took one final look around the space where they would be crowned tomorrow. Their coronation outfits had been tested and approved. Every hidden symbol, every personal touch, every diplomatic detail was perfectly in place. Catherine touched the tiny embroidered flowers from around the Commonwealth that decorated her gown, feeling connected to millions of people who would be represented in those delicate stitches. William checked his Morse code cufflinks one more time, drawing strength from the invisible presence of his children's names. The final rehearsal had shown them that their carefully planned outfits would work beautifully within the grand ceremony, while still carrying all the personal meaning they had woven into every detail. Tomorrow, the world would see the perfect balance of tradition and authenticity that they had worked so hard to create. They left Westminster Abbey feeling nervous but ready, knowing that their coronation clothes would help them stay true to themselves while accepting the greatest responsibility of their lives. The morning of Coronation Day dawned bright and clear as Catherine stood before her bedroom mirror for the final time as Princess of Wales. In a few hours, she would emerge as Queen Catherine, and the blue silk gown hanging nearby would carry her through that transformation. Every carefully chosen detail, every hidden symbol, Every personal touch was ready to tell their complete story to the watching world. William adjusted his military medals one final time, touching the Morse code cufflinks that spelled out his children's names. The weight of his ceremonial uniform felt familiar now after weeks of fittings and rehearsals, but the emotional significance still took his breath away. Today, these clothes would witness his acceptance of the crown and all the responsibilities that came with it. As their car approached Westminster Abbey, Catherine could see the massive crowds lining the streets. People had traveled from around the world to witness this historic moment, and television cameras were broadcasting every second to millions more viewers in their homes. Her heart raced as she realized that her carefully designed gown was about to become one of the most photographed dresses in history. The moment Catherine stepped out of the royal car, cameras captured every detail of her stunning coronation outfit. The blue silk seemed to glow in the morning sunlight, and the subtle Commonwealth flower embroidery became visible to those who looked closely. Fashion experts immediately began analyzing her choices, but Catherine felt confident that she had succeeded in looking both traditionally royal and authentically herself. William emerged from the car in his magnificent military dress uniform, and the crowd cheered as they caught sight of his ceremonial medals and decorations. The combination of his grandfather's war honors with his own military service awards told the story of duty and service across generations. Young people in the crowd could see that being royal meant real work and genuine contribution to society. Inside Westminster Abbey, representatives from Commonwealth countries smiled with pride as they recognized their national symbols embroidered into Catherine's gown. The Canadian delegation spotted their maple leaf worked in gold thread. The Australian ambassador pointed out the delicate wattle blossoms to his wife. Each tiny detail became a diplomatic success and a symbol of inclusion and respect. Social media exploded with appreciation for the hidden meanings and personal touches that sharp-eyed observers began to discover. Fashion bloggers posted close-up photographs showing the intricate embroidery work. Royal watchers analyzed every element of both outfits, creating detailed articles about the symbolism and significance of each choice. Catherine moved through the coronation ceremony with grace and confidence, feeling the hidden peace of wedding dress lace against her skin and drawing strength from that connection to her marriage vows and the love that had brought them to this moment. The personal touches in her outfit helped her stay grounded and authentic even during the most formal and overwhelming parts of the ancient ritual. William touched his Morse code cufflinks during quiet moments in the ceremony, feeling his children's presence even though they were watching from the royal box rather than participating directly. The hidden messages in his uniform reminded him that being a father would always be his most important role, even as he accepted the responsibility of future kingship. As the ceremony concluded and the newly crowned couple emerged from Westminster Abbey, their outfits had successfully communicated everything they had hoped to express. The traditional elements honored centuries of royal history and satisfied those who expected proper ceremonial dress. The modern touches and personal details showed that Catherine and William were determined to bring authenticity and genuine emotion to their royal roles. The photographs from Coronation Day would be studied and admired for generations, showing a couple who had managed to look completely appropriate for their historic roles while never hiding their true personalities or authentic love story. Their clothes have become perfect symbols of their approach to modern monarchy, balancing respect for tradition with genuine connection to contemporary life. Most importantly, their children watching from the Abbey could see parents who had stayed true to themselves while accepting enormous responsibility. The coronation outfits proved that authenticity and duty could coexist beautifully, creating a new model for royal service that honored the past while embracing the future with hope and genuine care for the people they would serve.